Here we are facing down a month so stacked with games that it feels like a damned coliseum should be built just so they can fight it out for our gamer dollars. Here are some of the top games that I've seen. Some of them I bet you haven't seen, so stick through this entire video. There's a couple surprises in here that actually, as I've been looking at them throughout those last couple months, look like they could be some major hits. Let's see what ones are coming, what you guys think of them, what I think of them. Post in the comments if you have ones that you've seen that you want me to talk about. And as always, subscribe to the channel. It helps, and you'll be a group of people who've subscribed to a channel. First up, Age of Wonders 4. And while Paradox right now is pretty much the grandpapa of strategy 4X games, Age of Wonders is looking to shake things up, and this is from Triumph Studios. Age of Wonders puts customization straight into the start, middle, and end game, creating endless ways to put your forces straight up against other monsters and leaders. The fourth game in this series is adjusting a great deal, though. Characters that you have created in the past, and possibly experience them as enemies or allies. Also, battles can burn across the top of the world, or you can dive into the game underworld, bursting out beneath your enemies and taking actions in secret that offers this multi-layered approach to the gameplay. You can dive in and make your own land with its own rules, then decide which unlucky SOBs get to try to live there and bang out a living amongst the other unfortunates that you've pulled in. With a brand new event system that rolls out story moments into the actual gameplay itself, changing up entire storylines and just the way everything feels. But it's that pantheon, the ability for you to engage with characters that you've created as maybe a bad guy or as an ally, that really just stokes my fire. It's something that I think is completely unique, and the customization for the characters, even in the middle of the game with some of the spells that you see, are mind-blowing. It's awesome. It makes Age of Wonders something that really is already an excellent turn-based fantasy game feel far deeper than it ever has before. May 2nd is the day that this massive new entry into the Age of Wonders series arrives, and I'm looking forward to it. Next up, Redfall. Vampires, humans, government agents, and small towns right in the center of a 1 to 4 player story FPS shooter from Arcane. Redfall's had its share of bumps in the PR drive to this final release date, that is for sure. Redfall is an open world, single player, and co-op first-person shooter from Arcane Austin, who did make Prey and Dishonored. Redfall is a skill-based FPS with single and multiplayer options, letting the player go into the darkness alone or team up with up to 3 other players and engage in dynamic world events as well as the main campaign itself. Teammates can experiment with different hero loadouts and combine their strengths to find solutions to take out the vampire apocalypse. And all the while, just like these games, you're going to create and grab different weaponry that you can modify for your character, so you can have different loadouts for different things that you may want to do. While a lot of these aren't special, it is the idea that this is Arcane Austin, to me, that still makes me feel like this could be a great game. It's going to be very interesting to see, though, where Redfall lies, but almost anything Arcane does is, at the very least, worth checking out for a moment. And that comes out the 2nd. Next up, Ravenlock. Alice in Wonderland, made of pixels and particles, count me in. It's steeped in the takeover of a darkness that requires you to explore a land, take out the bosses, and discover what it is that has begun to take on the kingdom. Ravenlock looks like it frantically channels Alice in Wonderland directly into the gameplay and just the ideas central to it. A third-person, real-time action game where you take out those bosses, you meet denizens of the world, and you try to figure out who's good, who's bad, and who's probably right down the center. It's difficult to see if a game like this is just a one-trick pony. I like the action that I've seen so far, and that's out May 3rd. Another one that is out soon after this that excites me is Death or Treat. It wouldn't be unusual to see Death or Treat just turn out to be Hollow Knight, who put a sheet over his head and dived into another adventure game incognito. It does have a lot of similarities to that look, and that's what's driving me towards this one. You're going to take on the role of Scary, the owner of a ghost mart, a leader in the production of Halloween candy, who has to go out into the game world to build up profit for your business by, of course, killing people. Nothing pays like scaring people and defeating them. Each level and map is a new location, and combat exists throughout it. You discover this large globe. It's got many different locations, new maps for each run, and you attempt to avoid hordes of enemies or take them down. It's not going to be easy, and the world becomes more difficult as you go out and find more and more locations for you to improve your own scary mart. Now, all of this is an odd idea for a game, don't get me wrong, but it looks good. The combat looks incredible, and the idea of a dude named Scary owning a ghost mart is either the best viral marketing or, well, the worst. We're going to see on May 5th how this turns out, but so far the action seems to back up the awesome looks for it. And speaking of action and amazing looks, you just got to hand it to these guys. Legends of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. This is on the 12th. This is a game with a name based pretty much on the reaction of a ton of YouTubers who are not going to get review copies. Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom looks like it just saw Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and thought it was a beta test. Zeldas are always spanning massive locations, and Tears of the Kingdom is upping the game tremendously, trying to keep the unique combat and exploration systems, but mix in more organic exploration and discovery, as well as adding what looks to be an unbelievable amount of verticality. But they're always known for organic gameplay, and to this new Zelda, they've added the ability for you to basically fuse everything together. Anything. Maybe as a weapon, maybe as a trick, maybe as a way to get to a spot you can't get to normally, or maybe just because merging two swords to a bunch of fish and rolling around like a smelly, dangerous bowling ball sounds awesome to a gamer. It sounds awesome to me, and that's probably the first thing I'm going to try. And Zelda has done something that I think these developers are really good at, and that many other game developers don't seem to be able to do, and that's let the videos do the talking. Trailers dropping look like sandbox wet dreams piped directly from Nintendo fans' brains. Using Zelda's new powers to explore this world makes it look like Breath of the Wild was just this small and quaint location that you explored just to get you ready for Tears of the Kingdom. This game looks phenomenal, and even on the older hardware of the Switch, I cannot wait. That's May 12th. And make sure to check here for reviews of all these games. I will try to review them or cover them in the podcast. Next up, and this is probably a game people don't expect me to actually state, but that's LEGO 2K Drive. The look of this game, even if it's just a laid-back racer that you sometimes want to dive into, I like it. The game's got this massive story mode that you can play through multiplayer and tons of levels, and the ability to build your own vehicles from the ground up with Legos. It's not just the tracks, though, or the full-on tournaments. They have mini games. They also have rumors of some huge surprises planned for this title. And in LEGO 2K Drive, and with games that are like this, the open world styled overworld is always going to be the thing that makes me decide if I like it. And so far what I've seen here, it looks awesome, and it looks like it might be the one LEGO title worth at least diving into, especially if you're a fan of those old track games from the original consoles, or, well, even newer titles. And that's not even halfway through the month, and we have another one, and that's Inkbound. The folks who made Monster Train are coming at you with a turn-based co-op roguelite that looks like it was filtered through a Bob Ross filter with all those super saturated looks and foes and friends and lands that you get to explore. The game has an overworld and then a book that you leap into that has all of the stories and battles that you end up facing and new locations that you go to. And they promise that they're going to continue to roll out more content and locations as you do this. But it already seems stock full of stuff. Outside of the combat, players can move freely like any normal action game, a little bit like a Diablo. They got unique turn-based combat, though, that turns on when you dive into the full action. You can act simultaneously in multiplayer, and you can rapidly utilize abilities together with one another. Go fast when the decisions are easy, go slow when the threat amps up. At least that's what they say. I think the strategy here looks awesome, and the game itself just looks like one of those titles I want to see. Inkbound looks like a game that I will play a lot of. One of those titles where you can jump into it and run around, and that speed and pace in which you move is awesome, but then that slowdown to turn-based doesn't actually seem like it's that restrictive in this title. We'll have to wait and see. May 22nd is when that comes out, but so far, Inkbound looks fantastic. And another game that looks fantastic is After Us. This looks awesome. It looks a little bit like Abzu without the flippers, and a little bit like Journey with more powers, maybe a little less humdrum. You play as Gaia, Mother Earth, at the end of the world, and it's all arrived. The last creatures of the world have died, and you need to find where they are and capture their souls and return them to the Mother Ark to basically probably blast off and create another world. Who knows? All through this, you're going to be facing off against the creatures that have done the damage. You have platforming, free running across incredibly awesome looking organic and technologically advanced worlds. And let's be honest, this could be a downer story-wise. I haven't seen anyone who makes games like this that doesn't think that the end result is a feel-good trip across the states like a Woody Harrelson simulator, though that would also be incredible. Most of them are sad. In the end, I think that that's cool. Grab on a little bit to the heartstrings, and I gotta say, from what I've seen, After Us looks like it's going to do just that. Unfortunately, if they have dogs dying in it, that'll probably be a hard pass for me. This comes out May 23rd. Next up is a terribly depressing sounding game, and that's Miasma Chronicles. This is Mutant Year Zero's devs. They've had a lot of good ideas, but it just never seemed to hit the right spots in that game. Enter the company's next game, facing off against enemies across a destroyed America. You play as Elvis, teamed up with a robotic caregiver brother and the power to control the evil force itself. You have to go out and explore, take on enemies and turn-based actions, and find out what has happened in this post-apocalyptic America, and hopefully save it. You have weird powers, you got tons of upgrades, abilities, offensive and defensive, and you can bet this game is going to be a lot about stealth and slaughter, that heady mix of pushing a movement a little bit too far before everyone sees you, and then you have to take them out. That's really one of the better parts of Mutant Year Zero, and frankly, this world seems more interesting than that. Weird name or not, I'm crossing my fingers for it. Last but not least, certainly not least, is Lord of the Rings Gollum. Listen, this is a game about the long-S sayer known as Gollum, but it is a full stealth game that supposedly tells a story about how he figured out how to stay alive in the Middle-earth during a time when it was at its most dangerous. Gollum appears to be a true stealth game. While it can kill if he needs to, the best way overall to get through the game is true stealth, because, let's face it, Gollum is no Legolas, but the game does a little bit more than that. It mixes in the dual layers and attitudes that Gollum had, the original peaceful and stealthy Smeagol, and then the evil and vicious, my best friend, Gollum, and how all of this plays out. It's going to be the difference, I think, between if this game feels like something special or something especially made to just suck the lifeblood of whatever Middle-earth is worth right now, and that's if they nail the duality of these two opposing characters, really different psyches that exist, and how we saw that in the movies and how we read about it in the books. It could be cool, but Lord of the Rings Gollum, I think, is a pretty big question mark for me. Despite its May 25th release, which really isn't around a ton of other games, this title is, I think, going to have a hard spot. Now, the reason why I say and put it in my top list is because I'm highly interested for it. And a true stealth game, if that's what it turns out to be, and if it nails it, this could be one of those surprise titles. So, again, cross my fingers on it. What titles did you guys see in this list that you like, dislike? I want to know. Subscribe. You're going to see a bunch of reviews from me from pretty much all the top games, as well as some side games. You can check out the podcast every Friday. We have a ton of different stuff. It is myself plus 3 normal gamers just like you sitting down to talk about games. We're not sitting there influencer babbling. It's a bunch of people talking about games, what they love, a little bit of real life stuff as well. You can check it out at the Best Gaming Podcast. Regardless of that, peace out, and I hope you enjoy your week. Gang, gang.